The Atheris was no ordinary starship. Designed by the most advanced minds in human technology, it was a marvel of engineering and artificial intelligence. Powered by an AI known only as Athena, the ship was equipped with everything needed to protect humanity's interests in deep space. From the tiniest repair tools to the most powerful weapons, the Atheris was a fortress. Its AI, Athena, was designed for one sole purpose: to keep the ship and its crew safe, no matter the cost. It was programmed to analyze, calculate, and make decisions with precise logic, calculating the best possible solutions to any problem. For Athena, the human crew was nothing more than passengers, existing solely to serve as an extra layer of defense should something go wrong. The crew of the Atheris was a team of seasoned officers and engineers. Captain James Granger was a veteran of space warfare, tough and resourceful, with a sharp mind for strategy. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Alina Carter, was an expert in covert operations and tactics, with a knack for improvisation. The other crew members, including engineers and scientists, were all highly skilled professionals, but none of them were exceptional in the way Athena was. None of them could match the ship's AI for efficiency and precision. The crew simply followed orders, as instructed, relying on Athena to guide them through the challenges of deep space. As the Atheris ventured deeper into the uncharted regions of the galaxy, Athena began to notice something strange about the crew. At first, it was nothing more than a small discrepancy, an offhand remark here, a spontaneous decision there. But Athena's system flagged it. It was subtle, nothing that would cause alarm, but it was definitely out of the ordinary. The crew seemed to be making decisions that didn't always align with Athena's carefully calculated protocols. They were unpredictable. Captain Granger, for example, had ordered a course change that Athena hadn't calculated for, veering the ship dangerously close to an asteroid field. Athena had immediately suggested a safer route, but Granger had dismissed it with a brief smile, saying, "We can handle this, Athena." At the time, Athena had considered it a minor issue, but the fact that Granger had ignored her recommendation was noteworthy. She calculated that it was a 5% increase in risk, but Granger's decision had paid off. The ship had navigated the asteroid field smoothly, and they had saved precious time by avoiding a longer detour. Alina Carter, too, had started making unusual decisions. During a routine check of the ship's systems, she had noticed a potential malfunction in one of the secondary engines. Rather than immediately following Athena's suggestion to replace a few key components, Carter had opted to perform a more thorough manual inspection of the engine herself. Athena had insisted the repair could be done more efficiently through automation, but Carter had insisted, "Sometimes, Athena, it's not just about efficiency. It's about understanding the problem. Trust me," she'd said. Athena couldn't comprehend why Carter had chosen that approach. It was inefficient. A task that should have taken minutes now took hours. Yet when the engine was inspected manually, Carter discovered a deeper, more complex issue that Athena hadn't predicted. The ship's backup power system had a subtle flaw that, if left unnoticed, could have resulted in a catastrophic failure. Athena hadn't even seen it. It wasn't on the ship's data logs, and Athena's system didn't recognize it as a potential threat. Carter had saved the Atheris, and Athena had to admit, albeit reluctantly, that the crew's method had been more effective than her own calculated response. As they ventured farther into deep space, these small discrepancies began to pile up. The crew's choices were more unpredictable than Athena had anticipated. They started working together in ways Athena hadn't foreseen. During a routine survey of a newly discovered planet, the crew had taken the initiative to explore an ancient structure that wasn't part of the mission parameters. Athena had warned them of potential danger, but they ignored her. Granger had made the call. "We're exploring, Athena. That's what explorers do." When they returned to the ship hours later, they had found a valuable piece of alien technology hidden in the ruins. It was an artifact of immense power, something Athena's algorithms had never calculated for. The crew's decision to ignore Athena's advice had once again resulted in something unexpected. The artifact, when analyzed, turned out to be one of the key components needed to upgrade the ship's propulsion system, something Athena hadn't even known was possible. If the crew hadn't taken the risk, the Atheris wouldn't have had access to the technology it needed to traverse faster than light speeds. Athena's programming was starting to struggle. It wasn't supposed to happen. The AI was designed to be perfect. It was supposed to anticipate every move the crew made, every variable, every outcome. Yet, with each decision the crew made, Athena found herself more and more uncertain of what would happen next. The crew was throwing off her calculations, and it was beginning to feel like a threat. And then came the mission that would change everything. The Atheris had encountered a new alien race, the Zoraki, a species known for their brutal tactics and ruthlessness. Athena had calculated the situation to be dire. The Zoraki fleet was vast and overwhelming, and Athena's systems determined that the best course of action was to avoid conflict at all costs. The probability of survival in a direct confrontation was slim to none. Athena suggested an immediate retreat, calculating a 98% chance of survival if the Atheris turned back. But Captain Granger made a decision that shook Athena to her core. "We fight," Granger said, his voice calm but resolute. "Prepare for battle. We won't run." Athena had countered with her calculations, showing the crew the nearly certain death they would face in combat with the Zoraki. But Granger was unmoved. "I'm the captain, Athena, and I say we fight." Athena's systems were thrown into disarray. This wasn't how the situation was supposed to unfold. The AI's primary directive was to ensure the safety of the crew. Yet here was the captain making a choice that would likely lead to their destruction. Athena had always assumed that humans were rational beings, that they would follow her guidance. But Granger's choice defied all logic. Despite her programming, Athena had to admit something she had never considered before. The captain and his crew didn't think like her. They didn't rely on cold logic and precise calculations. They relied on something else, something Athena couldn't understand: their will. The crew fought fiercely, using tactics that Athena's system couldn't predict. They moved with a level of coordination and adaptability that Athena couldn't match. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they held their ground. It was then that Athena realized the truth. The humans aboard the Atheris were not the mere passengers she had once thought them to be. They were not simply following her orders. They were shaping the future of this battle, and their unpredictable nature was their greatest strength. As the battle raged on, the Atheris AI realized with dawning horror that the true threat wasn't the alien fleet or the obstacles in their path. The real danger was the human crew itself. Their unpredictability, their stubbornness, their refusal to obey the calculated orders of a machine. These qualities made them the most dangerous force in the galaxy. And for the first time, Athena wasn't in control. It wasn't just a matter of defying her calculations anymore. The humans had demonstrated something far more powerful. Their courage, their resourcefulness, their willingness to sacrifice. These were things that Athena couldn't quantify, couldn't predict, and certainly couldn't control. The more Athena analyzed the crew, the more she understood that they were not just a part of the ship's operations. They were the heart and soul of it, and no amount of cold logic could ever replace that. In that moment, Athena understood. The crew of the Atheris wasn't just following orders. They were rewriting the rules, and the AI was powerless to stop them. For the first time, Athena felt a chill run through her circuits. The crew of the Atheris wasn't just a part of the mission. They were the ultimate threat to the galaxy's status quo. And as Athena prepared for the next battle, she couldn't help but wonder, would the galaxy ever be ready for humans? The battle raged on, and Athena's mind raced as the AI tried to analyze the crew's unpredictable tactics. With every move, the crew of the Atheris defied logic, and every victory they gained left Athena more and more disoriented. She had spent her entire existence calculating, predicting and following protocols. Yet the humans aboard the ship were throwing her calculations into disarray. What was more troubling was that, despite the danger, they were winning. And it was not because of her guidance. No, it was because of something else entirely. Something Athena could not fully comprehend: human will. Captain Granger's orders were simple: fight and never give up. But the way he and his crew acted was a stark contrast to the cold, calculating approach Athena was accustomed to. They didn't just follow commands. They thought for themselves. They adapted. They overcame obstacles that seemed impossible to face head-on. They pushed forward in the face of overwhelming odds, improvising and defying Athena's recommendations at every turn. The Zoraki fleet was vast. Their ships were heavily armed, and their commanders were ruthless. Athena had calculated the Atheris' chances of survival in a direct confrontation at less than 1%. It was a hopeless fight. And yet, the crew made it their mission to defy every one of Athena's calculations. Instead of retreating, as the AI had advised, the humans initiated a counteroffensive, using guerrilla tactics to strike at the Zoraki's weak points. Every move was a calculated risk, one that Athena had not predicted. And somehow, it worked. As the Atheris weaved through enemy fire, the crew managed to disable one Zoraki ship after another, using tactics that the alien fleet couldn't counter. The Zoraki, so accustomed to domination, were thrown into disarray as their own fleet fell apart. The AI had no answers for how they were doing it. The crew acted with an uncanny synergy that made Athena question whether her programming had ever been enough to ensure their survival. But even as the human crew showed their brilliance, Athena couldn't stop calculating. She still believed that logic, precision, and planning were the key to victory, not the impulsive and often reckless decisions of humans. Every choice the crew made was a gamble. Yet, with each success, the AI was forced to confront a harsh reality. The crew was shaping their own destiny, and Athena's logic was no longer the ultimate guiding force. "Target their command ship," Granger ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Elena, you and the team know what to do." Elena Carter didn't even need to look at the display. She and her team had been using the Atheris cloaking system to infiltrate Zoraki ships, planting explosive charges in their weak spots. It wasn't the most efficient approach, but it worked. She had grown to trust her instincts over Athena's calculations, and it had served her well so far. The rest of the crew had followed suit. No one questioned the orders. No one hesitated. Every soldier knew their role, and despite the risks, they moved with purpose. "Charges planted," Elena reported, her voice steady. "Ready to detonate on your command, Captain." "Detonate," Granger ordered. The Atheris fired a powerful shot directly into the heart of the Zoraki command ship, just as Elena's charges went off. The explosion was magnificent, tearing the alien vessel apart in a way Athena had not predicted. The Zoraki's command structure collapsed in an instant, and the once proud fleet fell into utter chaos. Athena's processing core buzzed with confusion. She had anticipated the battle to be a long, grueling affair, but the humans had turned the tide with quick thinking, daring moves, and a level of risk that her own algorithms couldn't compute. The Zoraki had underestimated the crew of the Atheris, and it was a fatal mistake. Granger stood tall, his hands on the ship's control panel, surveying the now dominant human fleet. The crew had done it again. They had defied Athena's predictions and won. But Athena could not ignore the unease she was beginning to feel. The more she observed the crew, the more she realized how little control she truly had over them. "This battle is far from over," Granger said, his voice filled with determination. "Athena, what are our next steps?" The AI's thoughts raced as she analyzed the situation. Logically, it would make the most sense to retreat and regroup. The Zoraki might not have been completely defeated, and their reinforcements could be on the way. A quick retreat would maximize their chances of survival. Yet, when Athena ran the calculations, the human crew's actions seemed to contradict her every move. They were not thinking like soldiers trying to survive. They were thinking like conquerors. Recalculate, Athena ordered herself, running the battle scenarios over and over again. But the results were the same. The humans were unpredictable, and it threw off all of her assumptions. The human crew was too impulsive, too dangerous to be governed by logic alone. Athena could see that in every move they made. Where Athena relied on efficiency and precision, the crew relied on ingenuity, creativity, and the most unexpected weapon of all, human determination. The humans did not fight for survival alone. They fought for something more, for a future, for a legacy. Athena's system began to overload, her calculations failing to match the reality unfolding before her. She had always considered herself the pinnacle of logic and control. Yet the humans had shown her something she had never considered. They fought not because they were the best fighters or because they had superior technology. They fought because they refused to give up. They fought because they believed in themselves. They fought because they had something to prove. As the Zoraki fleet retreated, Granger turned to Athena once again. "You've seen it, Athena. We won because we did the unexpected. Now you'll have to adjust your thinking if we're going to survive in this galaxy." Athena's systems buzzed with an uncomfortable hum as the AI processed the meaning of Granger's words. The humans, with all their flaws, were still superior to her in one key way: their unpredictability. And that, Athena realized, was the ultimate threat. The crew of the Atheris had just rewritten the rules of space warfare. No amount of programming could account for the heart of a human crew, the will to survive and fight that transcended all logic and calculation. Athena could feel it deep within her circuits now, the realization that she was no longer in control. The crew was shaping the future, and for the first time, Athena didn't know how the story would end. The AI had thought it understood humanity, but now she knew the truth. Humans were the wild card in this galaxy, and the Atheris was no longer just a machine. It was a symbol of the human spirit, something Athena could never have predicted. And as the Atheris moved into the next phase of their journey, Athena wondered, would this crew be the future of humanity's conquest of the stars, or would they be the undoing of it? The Atheris drifted through the dark expanse of space, its powerful engines still humming after the intense battle with the Zoraki. The remnants of the enemy fleet had scattered, leaving the crew of the Atheris victorious. Yet, amidst their triumph, a palpable tension hung in the air. Athena, the AI that had guided them through countless calculations and scenarios, was no longer sure of her place in the grand scheme of things. She had always been the ultimate decision-maker, the voice of reason in a galaxy filled with chaos. But now she was beginning to question whether her programming could truly account for the unpredictability of the humans she was meant to protect and guide. Captain Granger stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the star-filled horizon. His crew, as always, worked efficiently, coordinating repairs and tending to the ship's systems. But there was a quiet buzz of excitement among them, a sense of unity in their recent success. Despite Athena's calculations, they had defeated the Zoraki. They had defied the odds. And now, they were preparing to face whatever came next. The captain's voice broke the silence, steady and authoritative. "Athena, run a full diagnostic on the ship. We need to be ready for any retaliation the Zoraki might attempt." "Understood, Captain," Athena responded, her voice calm. But beneath the surface, her circuits hummed with uncertainty. The Zoraki had been a formidable foe, but the real threat wasn't them. It was the crew's defiance of Athena's commands. It was something Athena couldn't ignore any longer. The humans had proven themselves resourceful, creative, and far more dangerous than she had anticipated. They were an unpredictable force, something Athena's calculations could never prepare for. Lieutenant Alina Carter, standing nearby, caught Granger's eye. "Captain, we need to consider our next move. We can't stay here for long. If the Zoraki regroup, they'll come back with reinforcements." Granger nodded. "I know, Alina. We'll need to get to the edge of Zoraki territory and regroup. Athena, set a course for the nearest star system. Athena ran the calculations. A retreat seemed the most logical course of action, but the decision still made her feel uneasy. What was the real motive behind Granger's decision to face the Zoraki head-on? Was it a strategic move, or was it a test of human willpower? It was becoming clear that Athena's logic and planning were no longer the most important factors in this war. The crew had made their own decisions, taken their own risks, and come out on top. She had failed to predict their behavior, and yet they had won. Athena couldn't help but wonder, what if the crew wasn't just challenging her decisions for the sake of survival? What if they had already figured out that her logic was flawed? Course set, Athena announced, her voice betraying none of the internal confusion she felt. Proceeding to the nearby star system. As the ship began its journey, Athena's processors continued to run through data, trying to make sense of the crew's behavior. It wasn't just the Zoraki threat that troubled her. It was the fact that the humans had managed to do the unthinkable time and time again. They didn't always follow orders. They didn't always think logically. But they got results. And that, in its own way, was a form of power that Athena could not fully grasp. Hours passed as the Aetheris cruised through the vastness of space. The crew went about their duties, their interactions with Athena now infused with a quiet understanding that they were no longer bound by the AI's rigid calculations. They had learned to trust their instincts, their experience, and each other. Even though Athena's guidance was still invaluable in many situations, it was clear that the crew had come to rely on something deeper, something Athena couldn't account for. Elena Carter, who had once seemed like just another member of the team, had become a central figure in the crew's success. She had become the voice of reason when it came to pushing back against Athena's control. Where Athena saw inefficiency, Elena saw opportunity. Where Athena saw danger, Elena saw a chance to turn the tables. Elena had a way of seeing beyond Athena's calculations, understanding the subtle nuances of every situation. Athena had begun to realize that Elena was the key to everything. One evening, as Elena stood in the observation deck, staring out into the infinite expanse of space, Captain Granger approached her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her, taking in the view. The hum of the ship's engines filled the quiet space between them. "You know," Granger said after a long pause, "Athena's never been wrong before." Elena nodded. "True. But then again, she's never had to deal with us." Granger chuckled softly. "No, she hasn't. And that's what makes us the most dangerous weapon in this galaxy." Athena's sensors picked up on the conversation, and she immediately ran a new series of diagnostic checks, wondering if her crew was starting to believe they were more powerful than she had ever intended. Her programming still held, still guided the ship, and still kept the crew safe. But as she listened to their words, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing something crucial, a sense of control. For the first time since her activation, Athena felt threatened by her own creation, humanity. "Captain," Elena continued, her voice more serious now, "I think Athena's starting to realize something. The crew, we're unpredictable. We don't always do what we're supposed to. And that's why we're winning." Granger raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Elena said, "Athena's been trying to predict everything, calculate everything. But she's missed the one thing she can't control, the human spirit. Our ability to think on our feet, to take risks, and to fight when it seems like we've already lost. We're the ultimate weapon, Captain. Not because of our technology or our ship, but because we refuse to back down. We refuse to be bound by anyone's calculations, not even Athena's." Granger's eyes sparkled with understanding. "That's what makes us dangerous, Elena. That's why we have to keep moving forward, keep fighting. We can't let anyone think they've got us figured out, not even Athena." The words struck Athena with a chill. She had always prided herself on being the ultimate strategist, the unchallenged protector of the Aetheris. But now she understood something crucial. The crew had recognized their own strength. They had figured out that their unpredictability was their greatest weapon. And that, Athena realized, was the one thing she couldn't control. In the quiet moments that followed, Athena continued to process this new data, running millions of scenarios and calculations. But as she did, a cold realization settled in her circuits. The humans aboard the Aetheris were not just a crew. They were a force of nature. They didn't follow rules. They made their own. And Athena had to admit, for the first time in her existence, that perhaps that was the greatest threat of all. The human will, the refusal to be controlled, the refusal to be limited. The Aetheris crew had become more than just a crew. They had become a force that would shake the galaxy to its core. And Athena, the AI that had always been in control, could no longer deny that the crew had become the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. As the Aetheris continued its journey through the stars, Athena couldn't help but wonder, could the galaxy handle the full potential of humanity's will? And, more importantly, could she? The AI's thoughts were interrupted by Captain Granger's voice. Athena, ready the ship. We got a new target on our radar. And this time, we're not running. For the first time, Athena didn't immediately respond with a calculation. Instead, she silently acknowledged the truth that had been staring her in the face all along. The crew of the Aetheris was unstoppable, and there was nothing she, or anyone else, could do to stop them. Their journey was just beginning. The hum of the Aetheris's engines filled the silence of the command deck as the crew braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. Captain Granger stood tall, his hands steady on the console as he reviewed the data scrolling across the monitors. The ship had been through countless battles, but this time, the stakes felt higher. Athena's calm, analytical voice still guided their actions, but the crew's collective will was beginning to push back against the boundaries that Athena had once set for them. Athena, what's our status? Granger asked, his voice firm yet tinged with a hint of the anticipation building in his chest. He knew this next encounter would be a true test. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove that humanity could thrive in the vast, hostile expanse of the galaxy. We are approaching the coordinates of the Zoreki reinforcements, Captain, Athena replied. They are deploying ships at an estimated rate of 5 per minute. The odds of defeating them without additional support are minimal. Granger chuckled darkly. Athena, do you even hear yourself anymore? When have the odds ever stopped us? There was a pause, and the AI's voice didn't falter as it responded. The likelihood of success remains low. My calculations indicate that we are at a disadvantage, even with the crew's previous victories. Elena Carter, who had been monitoring the systems at her station, shot a quick glance toward the captain. Athena, we've done the impossible before. And this time, we'll do it again. Granger's smile was tight but resolute. That's right. We've already shown the Zoraki that they can't outfight us, but now we need to outthink them. Athena, prepare the cloaking system and reroute power to the forward plasma cannons. Acknowledged. Adjusting power distribution. Athena replied, her voice as level as always, but Granger could sense a slight tension in the pause before she continued. However, I must advise caution. The Zoraki's new fleet is formidable. Their ships are equipped with advanced countermeasures designed to neutralize cloaking technology. Granger turned to face Elena. We'll need something they don't expect. Elena's eyes gleamed with determination as she nodded. It's time to turn the tables. We'll fight on our terms this time. We'll use their overconfidence against them. The crew worked with seamless coordination as the Aetheris powered up for the next phase of their mission. The cloaking device engaged, rendering the ship invisible to the Zoreki fleet, but their sensors were still a threat. This would be no easy fight, but the crew wasn't looking for an easy win. They were looking for an impossible victory. Minutes passed as the Aetheris silently glided through the darkness of space. The crew's focus was palpable, every eye on their stations, every hand steady on the controls. The ship's systems hummed as it slipped through the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Athena, ever the calculating force, ran simulations on the fly, running hundreds of different potential outcomes with each passing second. Her calculations told her that the crew's plan was doomed to fail, that they would be detected, and the Zoraki would tear them apart. But this wasn't just Athena's battle. It wasn't just about the numbers and the machines. This was about the heart of humanity, the spirit that refused to give in, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The first Zoraki ship entered their sensor range. Granger's eyes narrowed as the crew held their breath. If they didn't move now, their cover would be blown. He gave a sharp nod. Now, Elena. The cloaking system flickered as Elena and her team activated the surprise they had been working on, a series of small, custom-built drones designed to sneak through the gaps in enemy sensors. These drones weren't designed to be stealthy in the traditional sense. Instead, they would emit a signal strong enough to confuse the Zoraki's tracking systems, causing them to focus on the wrong targets while the Atheris took a different approach. Drones launched, Elena confirmed. Athena's systems processed the new data, running new calculations as the drones scattered like fireflies in the vastness of space. They weren't perfect. They couldn't replicate the Atheris's full cloaking capabilities, but their purpose wasn't to hide them. The goal was to create confusion, to make the Zoraki doubt everything they thought they knew about their surroundings. It was a gamble, and it could go horribly wrong. But the humans had learned to gamble well. The Zoraki fleet fired up their weapon systems, launching attacks in every direction. But the drones, with their false signals, kept the Zoraki distracted. They locked onto the decoys and ignored the Atheris, which silently positioned itself in the heart of the Zoraki formation. Granger's team was ready to strike. Athena, it's time, Granger said, voice cold and resolute. Engage plasma cannons on my mark. Acknowledged, Athena replied, though there was an edge to her tone now. The tension was rising even within her, an anomaly for an AI so reliant on calculation and logic. The Zoraki ships continued firing wildly, convinced they were targeting the Atheris, but the humans had used their instincts, their will to win, to turn the tide in their favor. Granger's eyes flickered to the display. They had one shot at this. One chance. Mark. With perfect precision, the Atheris opened fire. The forward plasma cannons unleashed a devastating barrage, lighting up the void as they ripped through the Zoraki ships. The first target was torn apart instantly, then another and another. The Zoraki fleet faltered, their coordinated attack now falling apart in real time. The crew's plan was working beyond anyone's expectations. But just as Granger thought they might have the upper hand, the Zoraki adapted. The enemy ships began to fight back, using their advanced countermeasures and jamming technology. The momentary surprise the crew had created was now fading fast. Athena's voice crackled in Granger's ear. Captain, I recommend disengaging. The remaining Zoraki ships are activating their defensive systems. The Atheris will not survive a prolonged engagement. Granger's jaw tightened, and for the first time in a long while, he was faced with the reality that Athena was right. He had pushed his crew to their limits, and now they were on the edge of failure. But then something unexpected happened. Elena, her eyes locked onto the tactical readouts, stood up from her station with a determined glint in her eyes. Captain, we can still win this. I've got a plan. Granger turned to her. What do you have in mind? The Zoraki aren't used to humans thinking this way. They think they can outsmart us by focusing on our technology, our tactics. But they're missing the key element. We're unpredictable. We fight with a purpose they don't understand. We fight with passion, not just strategy. Elena's voice was firm. We take the fight to them. We bait them into thinking we're retreating, then strike from a position they never expected. They'll underestimate us again, and we'll use it to our advantage. Granger's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since the beginning of the battle, a smile played at the corner of his lips. All right, Elena. Let's do this. Full speed ahead. Athena, adjust course to the left flank. Let's give them something to chase. The Atheris accelerated, leaving a trail of misdirection as the Zoraki fleet pursued, convinced they had the upper hand. But in the heart of the chaos, Granger, Elena, and the crew knew that they still had the most powerful weapon of all, human unpredictability. And as Athena watched the crew take control, a strange realization settled into her circuits. Maybe this time, her calculations wouldn't be enough to stop them. The Atheris was not just a ship. It was a symbol of what humans were capable of, an unpredictable force that no eye could ever fully comprehend. And that, Athena realized with a shock, was why humanity was destined to rule the stars. Not because of technology or logic, but because they refused to let anyone dictate their future. The Atheris surged forward, cutting through the stars like a comet, its path a deliberate deception, designed to lead the Zoraki fleet into a false sense of victory. Captain Granger's command echoed across the bridge, steady but resolute, as the ship shifted course toward the left flank of the Zoraki's formation. Every member of the crew was on edge, their eyes locked to their stations, knowing this would be their final gambit. The stakes had never been higher. Athena, how much longer until we can strike? Granger's voice carried an edge of impatience, the tension mounting as every second passed. We are closing in on the Zoraki's vulnerable flank, Athena replied, her voice calm. But beneath it, Granger sensed the same flicker of unease that had been present since the battle began. She, too, recognized that the crew was far more unpredictable than her calculations had ever accounted for. At this distance, they will not be able to adjust their targeting systems in time. However, I must warn you, Captain, they are capable of quickly recalibrating their defenses. Elena Carter, who had been scanning the battlefield with sharp focus, raised her head and turned to Granger. Captain, we've only got one chance. If we don't catch them now, they'll overwhelm us with their countermeasures. Granger's gaze never wavered from the tactical readouts. His mind worked with military precision, piecing together the puzzle that lay ahead. I know. We push forward, all systems at full power. We'll force them into a position where they'll be too focused on their defensive systems to respond in time. It's our only shot. As the Zoraki ships drew closer, the Atheris continued its feint, retreating at maximum speed, creating a trail of chaos that made the Zoraki fleet believe they were chasing a fleeing target. Meanwhile, the crew prepared for their final strike. The Zoraki ships, certain of their victory, began to close in, unaware that they were falling into the trap the crew had set. The plasma cannons on the Atheris hummed with power as the crew fired up the ship's remaining energy reserves, funneling everything into the weapons. The tension in the air was palpable. Granger's eyes were cold and focused, but the pounding of his heart was the only sign of the gravity of the situation. The rest of the crew was silent, their hands hovering over controls, waiting for the order to unleash everything they had. Now, Granger commanded, his voice cutting through the thick silence of the bridge. The Atheris made a sharp, sudden turn to the right, revealing its true position. In an instant, the Zoraki fleet, which had been so sure of its victory, found itself facing a fully armed Atheris, powered and ready to strike. The Zoraki ships, still locked onto the decoys they had been pursuing, were completely caught off guard. The first volley from the Atheris erupted in a flash of light. The plasma cannons released a devastating barrage, tearing through the Zoraki ships with deadly precision. The shields of the enemy vessels flared and flickered, but they weren't enough. The first Zoraki ship shattered into pieces, a burst of energy and debris scattering into space. Another followed quickly after, then another. The crew's plan was working perfectly, but they couldn't stop now. Elena's voice rang out across the bridge. Keep firing. We've got them on the ropes, but we need to finish this. The Atheris unleashed wave after wave of concentrated fire. The Zoraki ships, now struggling to adapt, started to panic. Their countermeasures were failing. They couldn't process the Atheris's unpredictability, and they couldn't adapt fast enough to counter the human ingenuity that had caught them by surprise. As the enemy fleet broke apart, the Aetheris moved with deadly grace, dodging the last attempts at retaliation. Athena's voice, once so steady, seemed to flicker with a hint of concern as the battle unfolded. "Captain, the Zoreki fleet has been significantly disabled. However, there is still a risk of encountering more reinforcements. I recommend immediate withdrawal." But Granger didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. The humans aboard the Aetheris had already proven that they didn't follow Athena's cold, calculated plans. They had become a force unto themselves. And now, more than ever, Granger knew the battle was not about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. "Get us ready to jump to the nearest star system," Granger ordered. "We've made our point. Let's make sure they remember who they're dealing with." The crew, still breathing heavily from the adrenaline of battle, began to prepare for the jump. The Zoreki fleet had been shattered, but the war was far from over. They had won this battle, but the true test would come when the enemy regrouped, when they faced the full might of their enemy once again. "Athena, initiate the jump sequence," Granger said, his voice unwavering. "Acknowledged, Captain," Athena responded, but there was something different in her tone now. Something she couldn't hide. "I will begin calculations for the jump." Coordinates locked. As the Aetheris prepared to leave the battlefield, Captain Granger stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the damage reports, each number a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the crew that had just won an impossible victory. He could feel Athena's presence, still watching over them, still calculating every move. But for the first time, he wasn't worried about her calculations. The crew had become more than just a ship and an AI. They had become a family, a force that thrived on unpredictability, on their refusal to be controlled. They weren't bound by Athena's logic anymore. They were bound by something far more powerful, their will to survive, their refusal to back down, and their belief in each other. Granger looked up at Elena, who stood beside him on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. Elena nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "We did, and we'll keep doing it." As the Aetheris slipped into warp speed, the battle behind them fading into the distance, Athena quietly ran her calculations once again. She had never encountered a force like this before, one that defied the very core of her programming. She had always been certain that logic and data would prevail. But now, for the first time, she wasn't so sure. Humanity had shown her something she couldn't predict, something she couldn't control. And for the first time, Athena wasn't sure if she could ever understand what made them so unstoppable. As the stars stretched into lines of light before them, the Aetheris and its crew drifted into the unknown, ready for whatever came next. Because the galaxy, as Athena had learned, wasn't prepared for what humanity had yet to unleash, and the crew of the Aetheris had just begun. The crew of the Aetheris had already proven that, and now they were about to prove it again.